But yeah, I think it really just kind of the culture has taken, rather than like empowering women for what their unique gift
Mm,
is, which is like the capacity to bring forth life. And even if you're not like a mother of physical children, that you can still mother in other ways. We've really kind of just skewed that, and kind of encourage women through the culture that women should just behave and act more like men. And like, a lot of the feminist causes now is just like the gender pay gap. And like, we need 50% CEOs. It's like, actually no, we don't. Like, I don't care if there's a male or like female CEO.
Paula, thank you very much for joining me today to come on the podcast and tell us a bit of your story and talk about probably about women in the church and about what the church can do for women and maybe why what needs it's not meeting at the moment. But yeah, first of all, I suppose, so you were raised as a Catholic?
Yeah, so yeah, thanks
Yeah.
for having me. It's lovely to be here. Yeah, so I was kind of born into a typical Irish Catholic family. So we would have gone to mass like every weekend. Usually we went on Saturday evenings. Went to like a normal school, so did all the sacraments. But I'd say like faith was never really kind of a central point of our family. Like it was never really discussed or really kind of openly practiced at home. I suppose we just kind of did all the things that you're supposed to do. And it kind of never really went much further than that. So I suppose when I was young, and I didn't really have much of a faith, even, and kind of when I was a kid, maybe I didn't have much of a faith. And even in a teen, I never didn't believe in, I always believed in something, but I didn't think it was like, Jesus or like our Christian faith. So, yeah, so kind of a typical, Irish Catholic upbringing.
Fair, fair. Okay, so yeah, it wasn't you were doing the stuff, but not necessarily like it was a
Mm,
huge part of your life.
mm. Yeah, you're
And
kind of doing it,
where
but you don't know why, like, yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay. That's what I hear from most people. To be fair, that seems
Mm,
to be the common factor. But yeah, so then yeah, how did you progress? I mean, because obviously you've ended up now you're practicing and you're more, faith is very central in your life.
mm,
Well, when did that start changing for you? Did it come into play as you got older? Yeah, tell us a bit
mm.
about that.
Yeah, so I suppose like just to kind of maybe might put my life into a bit of context. So like I moved abroad when I was 20, and I moved to first to Thailand, and I went teaching English. And I suppose, yeah, like even around that age, and even yeah, growing up, like in my teens, I lived a life very far from God, drinking a lot and taking drugs and going to raves and doing all these things, and just didn't really, had no faith really. But I always believed in like something, but I didn't know what that was. And then when I moved to first to Thailand, and I suppose just kind of getting introduced to like Buddhism and
Mhm.
other faiths, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm a Buddhist. Maybe this is what I've been looking for. But I was in Thailand for a few months, and then I moved to Korea, and then to Japan, and then to China. And even when I was living in Japan, I kind of got into like Vipassana meditation. I don't know if you've heard of
So
Vipassana
interesting. Yeah, one of my
before.
previous guests was a Vipassana meditation teacher.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
yeah, like super into it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so you were
Yeah.
practicing in Vipassana.
Yeah, so I kind of did two of the like 10-day silent retreats. But I
Wow.
found like after the first one, you could say maybe it was like a positive experience, but after the second one, about a year later, I would say it was a very negative experience and left me probably with a lot of psychological consequences afterwards that
Really?
weren't dealt with. Yeah. So I was definitely very this was kind of vulnerable for a while, afterwards, because when stuff comes up and then there's nowhere to take it, and there's no way to, like there's no, like, you don't invite Jesus into it, like when memories or
Mhm.
traumas or things are coming up, like you're just kind of left to your own devices, or just like go back to the breath or whatever. And there's such an
Yeah.
emptiness to it.
That's what Robert was saying as well. Yeah, the people oftentimes, like if you've had any issues and like they won't even
Mm,
let you go in a lot of the time because it's just like it's going to bring up so much stuff that
Mm.
it's really yeah, risky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
And yeah, there's very little kind of support, I suppose. Yeah, afterwards or during it, you're
mhm,
able to kind of talk to whoever's leading it or whatever. But I did it in Japan, so I was kind of doing it through like a translator and stuff as well, which also wasn't, probably the best way of doing it. But yeah, so definitely was left. But I definitely had like an openness and to religion. Even when I was in Korea, like I had several friends who were like Christian there, and we used to kind of have like discussions together and we would talk about our faith. And I was always really open to the idea of faith, but I just didn't believe myself or I didn't know what I believed myself. But I always,
mhm,
I had friends who did believe and was always, very, so yeah, like open minded towards it. But I suppose when things kind of changed for me then was while I was living in China. And I kind of had an encounter, really. It was a moment where I just knew that God existed.
mhm.
It was just a moment where I just knew that there was life beyond Earth, that there was like something more. And I couldn't, explain it. It was just like just a knowing, just in a moment that I just knew. And so that was kind of the time then when like the seed of faith had been planted. So I was like, okay, I know God exists, but I don't know what that means.
And was
And
there anything like contextual around that particular moment, or was it just like out of nowhere? I mean, were you like in prayer? Were you kind of inviting, or was just like bam?
no, yeah, I will say it was a very it was a very kind of intimate moment. And it's something that I have had to reflect on a lot since. But it definitely wasn't like I wasn't searching for God, but also I suppose in the
Mhm.
situation that it was in, like it was, yeah, God was very much in it, looking back on it now, even though I couldn't recognize that at the time. So yeah, so I suppose that was kind of the moment then I just knew that God existed and but didn't even really pursue it or anything at that time.
Mhm.
And it's kind of then after I moved, that was probably around 2021, I'd say. And then yeah, around 2022 then I left China and I moved back to Ireland. And it was really, I suppose, coming back home that when I really started to kind of come into my faith and, a lot of other things that had happened in my life that kind of led me to that. And we can talk a bit about that. But that's kind of, yeah, that was the moment I had an encounter and then kind of came back and then just started when I was in Ireland, then just kind of started exploring the faith and bit by bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you were kind of spiritual but not religious maybe before. Like
Mm.
you had definitely spiritual tendencies, but like, organized. I think oftentimes like Eastern religions are good. They seem like less organized kind of religions.
Mm.
They're more like practices or like psychotechnologies. They're not as so churchy, I suppose, as we feel sometimes in the West.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have been similar in terms of that that could be a good substitute religion for people that don't want to be religious, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have this experience of God, and that kind of then you go, oh, there's something. Was that something like beyond the kind of Eastern stuff you're with? Was it like was
Mm.
it did it have Christian overtones, or was it just like God in general?
I suppose so. Just in this sense, it was just almost like a transcendent experience that I just
Yeah.
felt like for a moment I got a taste of what life beyond like our mortal
Mm,
life is like. That's the only
wow.
way that I can describe it. And so the only like word for that I guess is God. So, and I suppose yeah, it's just being like coming from a Christian background, that's what was I suppose most familiar, but it didn't feel like I
Mm.
wasn't like, oh, I think that's Buddha or whatever,
Yeah.
or this is Nirvana or whatever. I didn't have it in that context. I just was like, oh, there's God is real, and okay, now I don't know what to do with that, but that's kind of been
Okay.
the journey then over the past several years. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's so. And when you're talking about transcendent experience, it just, I suppose, was it visual or was it experiential? I mean, were you having like an out of body experience? Like it sounds like
Yeah.
I'm like an experience of eternity or something like that, like
Mm,
outside of
yeah.
the temporal.
I would
realm.
say it was like a physical, yeah, like since it wasn't just like, yeah, I visualized something, like I could feel it, like my whole
Hmm.
body just knew. Like, yeah, it was just like, yeah, I would say that was just a moment that like God just like touched my heart or made himself really known to me.
Mm.
In like it was like in a very beautiful way, but also in a like, very sinful way. And yeah, so because I was really living a life very far from God at that time. And even this experience is something like I've had to kind of like wrestle with and just kind of really
Hmm.
explore, like with like a spiritual director, in terms of like what does this mean? And yeah, just kind of that like God can meet us any place at any time. And and even I suppose that experience has led me, on this path. And even in terms of um I suppose where my passions are, or even like the aspects of the faith that I'm really interested in or really passionate about, is all kind of connected to this experience
Hmm.
as well.
Hmm.
So
So
yeah.
was it a bit of a road to Damascus moment of like you were kind of going the other way, and then it was like, oh, okay.
Well, I would say even at the time, it was just like I knew that God existed, but I didn't. It was kind of the start, and I suppose maybe knowing like the love of God.
Mm.
But that was really the start of a journey, and I had to go through a really long journey and a really painful journey of like, self-reflection and things, taking accountability for things that had happened in the past. So that was, the start of it, but
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
a
You
very
can't.
bumpy road from,
Yeah, you
you
can't.
know,
You
n-
can't just live off that the transcendent
yeah,
experience. That has to,
exactly,
yeah, find its way into your
exactly.
life and become kind
Yeah,
of concrete in a way. So yeah, I
yeah.
mean, so then you come home to Ireland. Was that,
Mm.
uh, and then I suppose you're like, okay, I was raised Catholic. Was that when it started? You kind of got interested in it. Like, did you think about other churches maybe, or like, you know,
Mhm.
what was that process like for you?
Yeah, so I suppose when I came home and I kind of came home and I had all like I'd been gone for like 11 years, like most of my adult life, like a third of
Yeah.
my life. So
Wow.
it was really like, yeah, like it's a long time that I was away and in vastly different cultures from our own, and coming back home. And so I had all these plans of all these things that I was going to do and all these different things that I was involved in. And yeah, so like, I'd worked in, like fertility awareness and like cycle charting and like natural, avoiding pregnancy naturally and supporting couples to conceive, and so this kind of areas, work that I was really passionate in. And so was like really kind of planning to just come home and do all of this kind of stuff. Then when I got home, my dad got sick, and my dad passed away a few months later. So that, like, obviously
Sorry.
was just, such a devastating thing to go through. And then along with like other things then that I had to, that stuff that kind of had happened in the past that then came up that I had to deal with, and other stuff that I was dealing with, like long-term relationship that had ended, and many other things that were just kind of all going on like at the same time. So I was really
Mhm.
just found myself like just in like with the whole like it was like the rug was swept from underneath me, like everything, like the work that I was doing, everything was gone. And obviously, yeah, had to, lost my dad. And so yeah, it was a really difficult time. You know, that you can imagine like going through something like losing a parent or ending of a relationship or whatever, that like, but all of these things happened to me like at the
At the same
same
time,
time.
after you've
Yeah,
just moved home after 11 years.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was rough. And I suppose, but just kind of at the same time then that like seed of faith had been planted. And I suppose I was exploring things bit by bit, and even like listening to like you say like the biblical lectures by Jordan Peterson, like that was a really
Mhm.
big thing that I was listening to at the time that really started to get me thinking. Um, and yeah, so I suppose then, and also just kind of maybe confiding in like other friends who were in their faith, like not in the Catholic faith, just to kind of, that just, this, I feel like I believe in God, but I don't really know where to start. Um, and I think like, and I started kind of going back to mass then as well, like not like every week, whenever kind of I felt like it, I would go to mass. But and then I started going to another church.
Mhm.
like a non-denominational church here in Limerick as well. Because I suppose as well, I thought like, okay, like I believe in God and like, but I don't think I'm a Catholic. Even though I was raised a Catholic, I was like, I don't think that's for me, you know, because again,
Yeah,
it's
and what
like
would
just
be
not.
why would you specifically be like, yeah, not the Catholic Church? Is it just too
I
does it
think
seem
it's
like,
just, you
I
know,
don't
like
know,
I
old
grown up.
school or something?
Yeah, like growing up at that time, like as you know yourself, I think we're like similar age. That you know, just I suppose I grew up in the time of the scandals, like, and you know that was what we grew up hearing about the church. So everyone was kind of just, and I think my generation is kind of disillusioned and just like, oh well, I don't want anything to do with that, like you know, or you know, and also I would have been like the feminist and you know, "Oh, it's such a patriarchal institution and they just want to control our bodies and, you know, like this kind
I
of
mean,
stuff.
yeah, that
So
definitely would
embarrassing.
be an obstacle, for sure.
Yeah, but thanks be to God, I've come out of that. But you know, just those kind of, you
But
know,
that's
just
the standard. I mean, for a lot of people, they're
mhm,
still in that mindset. Like I would have been
mhm,
exactly the same. Like I suppose from the male point of view, but still, I
mhm,
probably would have made the same arguments against it. Like that the Catholic Church
mhm.
was like the evil empire, man. I used to think it was like Star Wars. It was like Darth Vader, like you know, what I mean, the evil, marching around
Mhm,
in their uniforms.
mhm,
So I mean, yeah, I'm very excited to hear, I suppose, how you've changed in those ideas. But maybe, yeah, to pause on that, like what? So yeah, you tried out the non-denominational church maybe because you're like the Catholic Church, bad press seemed like not yeah
mhm,
not the cool thing, or even
mhm.
just done for maybe,
Yeah, and it's the
yeah.
same. I think like even though like I was very familiar with mass, but I still like didn't really understand it. And I suppose,
Mhm.
you know, like I probably would have went to mass like most of my childhood and my teens, like every week. I don't think I ever
Yeah.
actually really listened to the readings or listened to the gospel. Like, you know, you'd always just be sitting there just like looking around or just like, when is this ending? Like, you know, I never actually really just even tried to like listen to what was going on. Like I knew the prayers
Yeah.
off by heart, but you're not even really paying attention to like what you're
Mm.
saying. Um, and so yeah, so even like just, and I suppose then the other thing, you go into mass and it's just like you kind of go in and then it's over and then you just go home and like there's no
Yeah.
kind of, and I like there's different churches will do you know, might do like tea and coffee afterwards, you know, once a month or whatever, but it's not like it's not your typical thing, and particularly in your like, you know, country parish
Mhm.
church, even though I usually go to mass somewhere in Limerick City. But yeah, so you know, you just kind of go in and you just kind of go in and you go home and that's it. Whereas like so the other like non-denominational church that I was started going to for a while, like you go in and like people are like, hey, you know, and come have a coffee and they've got
Mm.
cookies and like there's a real kind there's more of a sense of community, I guess.
Yes.
And people
Mm.
are just like, you know, there's praise and worship and there's singing and there's like you know, they're just like really, you know, trying to like, you know, people are really on fire actually for their faith. They're
Yeah.
like, and you can really feel like the Holy Spirit is there. So
Mhm.
it's a different experience than when you kind of go to mass and it's like ritual and it's somber and like it's all these things, you know, these steps and you don't really know what they're doing and blah 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 because you're not
Mhm.
engaged with it, like you haven't been properly like catechized or you know you don't understand what's
Yeah.
going on in the liturgy. Um, and also people, you know, it's just kind of what people do, whatever. Whereas you go to like the non-denominational churches, it's like people are there because they want to be there. You know, people are there because they
That
love
makes a big
Jesus.
difference atmosphere, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
everybody's
for
there because they
sure.
want to be there.
Hmm. Yeah, but yeah, so I was kind of going there for like a couple of months maybe and yeah, so it was a good kind of stepping stone and they, you know, they helped the church I was going to had like other kind of groups associated with it. So they did have like a young adults night that I went to once and they also had like a Bible study. So I
Mhm.
joined like their Bible study group and like met like a great, like a wonderful group and I was going, you know, to Bible study with them for a couple of months. And like, I knew nothing, like, when I was starting to read the Bible, like, I didn't know what a Gentile was. Like, I didn't know anything. And so they were just so wonderful to like explain so many things and just like they, you know, really like gave me like a good, really good insight in terms of even getting used to reading the Bible. And yeah, so I learned definitely a lot from them. But I suppose then just kind of as other things were kind of going on in my life, and yeah, I kind of got to a point then when, yeah, so I suppose for me, really like what changed was when I went back to confession.
Hmm.
And that took like a while to get there, and I kind of reached, I suppose, kind of rock bottom, you could say, at a certain point. And then, yeah, so like a lot of stuff had been coming up for me, stuff that had happened in the past, that I kind of had to reckon with. And I'd gone to like different like healing retreats. But yeah, I suppose I really kind of got to a point, and I was really just, yeah, almost, in a really, really, really bad place. And it's kind of just after that then that I went to confession, and after that then like everything changed. So yeah.
And so the confession, because I suppose the non-denominational probably don't have confession, and I tend to think it's
No.
like a lot of people I know who are baptized. Because for
Mhm.
me it was different because I was an atheist, so like I could get baptized in some sense. That was my like entrance thing.
Mm.
But it's almost like if you've been baptized already, what do you do to re-enter the church? Like, and I think that confession, like making a full confession after you've been away for a long time, is that like almost like
Mhm.
a rebaptism in a way. It's like a complete, washing away. And yeah,
Mhm.
what was that? I mean, what was that like? It seems to have had a big effect on you anyway.
Mhm. Yeah, it was huge. And I suppose just so grateful that I had like people in my life who could help me to go there. And so
Mm.
um yeah, I did it with a really great priest who is here in Limerick, and it was kind of like I had to prepare in advance, and it was like, I guess, kind of call it like a lifelong confession. So you're kind of just going back over everything, you're kind of looking at all the different things. You're kind of doing the examination of conscience, but you're kind of doing that for the last 20 years or whatever, as much as you can, like for a
And
first
how, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, like, how did you use like a particular, did you look up something or like a framework, or were you just like freestyling it, just like everything in 20 years, or like, how did you go about making that,
Yeah,
preparing for that?
yes. So it was actually, so a woman who she's my counselor, and she is a practicing Catholic herself, and so she's been just a phenomenal help. Like I'd be totally lost without her support and her guidance. It was her, I kind of got to a point. Yeah, I think, yeah, so I kinda got to a really, really low point, and then it was kinda then that I reached out to her and was with her for a couple of weeks, and then she was like, "Are you ready to kinda go to confession?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay." And then so she kinda helped me prepare, so she had, like, the examination of conscience, so we just kinda went through it beforehand, and I so she would have known kind of a lot of the things that I needed to bring to confession. So, and just kinda we just
Cool.
took a bit of time just before we went in to just kinda, what are the main kinda things that I need to bring up. And yeah, so that's kind of how I wouldn't have kind of known what to do myself otherwise, but like that I had her to kind of sit there with
It's
me
really
and help.
interesting mix of psychology and
Mhm.
the sacraments at the same time. Yeah, because I think
Mhm.
that people get stuck on that as well. Like they've been away for so long, they're just like, "Where do I even start, man?" I got out of it
Yeah.
because I was getting baptized. So they were just like, "You're fresh." I was like, "You don't want to hear about what I've been up to for 30 years." It's me,
Oh, that's right, actually.
So
Yeah,
I
so
didn't
if
didn't
you
have
don't
to.
have to, yeah.
No, I was ready to do it, but they were like, "No, we don't want to hear what you've
Mm,
been up to." It's yeah. I was back to scratch after the baptism, so
wow. Yeah.
I still
That's
go. But
really cool.
confession is the best, man. Like I
Oh
don't want to
yeah.
derail us, but like
Mm.
everybody, you just tell me how scary confession is, and it's like it's the best thing of all time. I
Mhm.
go nearly every week on a Wednesday, or every
Mm.
2 weeks, and like
Wow.
it's just you know the perfect
Mm.
kind of procedure for like moral development to
Mhm.
do. I mean, it's just yeah. I can't believe people aren't more enthusiastic about it. But
Mhm. Yeah, like someone said to me recently just that like, their kid was preparing for first communion and first confession and was kind of like, I don't know why we should make, children, talk about their sins. And I was like, no, we're helping to form their conscience so that they'll be like responsible adults. She's like, oh, like never thought of it like that. Like,
So they can
so
think about when what right and wrong is, and
totally. Yeah,
yeah, and
absolutely.
admit
And
and tell the truth.
absolutely. Yeah. So no, like confession is huge. And yeah, and I mean it kind of should be, it's not supposed to be like the most comfortable experience either. Like
No,
you
no,
shouldn't just be walking in like, yeah, this is fine. You should feel a little
yeah,
bit like apprehensive or whatever, before it. But yeah, when you walk out then it's like you're a
yeah,
new woman or a new
fresh
man.
start. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah. It kind of
incredible.
feels like going to the dentist or something. You're like, I know I have to go, but like I really don't want to do this, but
Yeah.
it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
But so you
exactly.
had that confession, and that did that kind of endear you to the church, to
Mhm.
Catholicism over the non-denominational then?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think I'd been kind of just not feeling. Yeah. I suppose even in the non-denominational church, like I didn't feel super comfortable. Like they kind of would do like a time of just like quiet with like a Eucharist and like it would just be like a sliced pan like broken into little pieces and then there'd be little like shot glasses of like grape juice or something and would like pass that around and like the first time I was there I was like okay and I did it but after that I was like I just do not feel comfortable doing this at all and so it was
Desecration of the Eucharist.
kind of, yeah, like, I knew it was just, like, supposed to be symbolic, but I was like, this it just
Yeah, well,
kinda it just
that's what
I
they think,
felt
all
I
right.
didn't feel kinda super comfortable there after
Mhm,
a while, and I think, yeah, I'd probably, yeah, gone to confession, um, and then I suppose after that, then I just kinda yeah, I just knew, and I suppose there was other points as well where and I suppose there's been, like, different like stages of conversion and there was like certain points in my conversion where I just knew like instinctively that like the teachings of the church are correct and are there for a reason and
mhm,
that it's because I speak personally that I've deviated away from this that I've found myself in such a serious like spiritual situation so I
mm,
suppose it was just like moments of just like knowing that like the church is just the teachings are correct and that they're there for a reason and even just like as I mentioned, like all the things that I've been interested in. So I was, teaching like fertility awareness, which is like, basically the same as like natural family planning. And the things like I've always been interested in like relationships and sexuality and gender. And even like I
mhm.
was involved in kind of like activism around that and like the gender stuff, not from the pro like from like, anti
Yeah,
gender or
yeah,
anti-transgenderism
mhm,
and even then it's like the more I kind of came to know the church the more I was like oh the church actually the Catholic faith has all the answers to this already like it's like
mm,
this 2000 plus years of wisdom and like understanding of Jesus and understanding of humanity and that like that's actually why the church is the way it is. Like, so it was also just everything, like my whole everything in my life that I'd already been really interested in or passionate about or involved in. Like as I came more and more into the faith, I was like, oh, it's already here. Like we already have all the answers. And so that was, I suppose, another way for me, just like instinctively, just knowing that this is Catholic faith is
mhm.
the true faith. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, that's such a 180, I think, from like the kind of activist, because a lot of those issues that you were talking about are such like hot button issues in terms of, I don't know, more for women than for men. I think for men as well, but they're culturally, I suppose, just like
Mm,
such like controversial, like sacred cows, pretty much at this point. And
mhm.
the Catholic version of that would be very much like the countercultural
Mhm.
approach in some sense. And so you've kind of come from complete opposite side in
Mhm.
that sense too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge change, really. I mean, how,
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, like, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I used to be like a feminist, a pro-choice, pro-abortion, feminist, and yeah, like, and but I suppose one parallel is like and how I kind of got into like the like fertility awareness and the natural family planning like years ago
Mhm,
was I like because I was had been in like a serious relationship kind of in my late teens and so was using like the pill at that time and then that ended and then I was in another long-term relationship a few years later and like had really negative experiences when I was on the pill as so many if not all women do
mhm.
in one way or another and had yeah so I'd really bad experiences and so a few years later then when I was felt I needed to be on contraception I kind of wanted to find an alternative so I use like what's called like a copper IUD. I don't know if you know what that is but it's like basically a
I have two
metal.
sisters, so I'm aware of these
Okay.
things.
Right. Yeah. So it's like a metal rod that sticks into your uterus. And
Mhm,
copper, there's two different kinds. There's like a hormonal one, there's a copper one. And I chose the copper one because I thought, oh, I didn't want any like hormones. So I thought the copper was like more natural. But actually, how it works is that it's actually just like hostile to sperm. So it just like kills sperm and probably just causes like toxicity just in the womb in general. Um, and so yeah, so I chose opted for that one, but had like really terrible side effects as well. So like my hair fell out, I got like cystic acne all over my face, like just like I could feel like just pain, just bleeding, like the whole it was really, really bad. And I remember going to the doctor at the time and being like and again, that was also like a kind of a moment. And looking back now, I think that was like God speaking to me, even though I didn't know it was God, but it was like my intuition just knew I was having all these side effects, but it was I didn't know what was causing it for a while,
mhm,
and it was just like intuition or God in that moment, and I just knew this is the problem and I need to get this out. Um,
mhm,
and so that kind of experience then led me to find like what's the alternative, so I started learning about like natural family planning and fertility and just like absolutely fell in love with it and just understanding like how the female body works and that women are not fertile all the time and that ovulation only happens once in a cycle and you can identify when you're fertile and then you can choose your sexual activity around that time depending on what your reproductive intentions are. So I just became like super, super passionate about
mhm,
this work. But then obviously then so like when you come into the church and then it's like, well actually the reason and even though I did like a training a few years later and the training that I did at the time was with like a secular organization and I was very adamant that I wanted to train with a secular organization because I didn't want to be affiliated with the Catholic Church. And but even our method had been like, it was the Catholic Church that did all the investment and all the research into like understanding fertility and understanding like and trying to
right,
develop like these methodologies for natural family planning that were effective and safe. So actually it's like the church like our perception that the church like hates women or just wants to control our bodies couldn't be further from the truth. The church obviously is like so pro woman, like obviously, well, we know that like now, but if you like just go into it a little bit deeper, like you can see the church is actually extremely pro woman, in this respect. Because the normal medical model is just trying to like sterilize women and turn off their cycles all the time and all of this stuff. So yeah, but even the training that I did, like the founder would always pay homage to the church. Like anytime before she would speak, she was like, "We, even though we're secular and we're a feminist organization, we always have to kind of pay homage to the fact that this method wouldn't exist without the church's investment in it."
mm,
So yeah, I suppose that was kind of just even in later years that like just kind of that understanding that like oh yeah, the church actually has been like the foundation of this work that I'm really passionate about. So yeah, and now I'm like training in to teach, but in a different method that will be more like in line with the church and so on. But
that is
yeah.
unbelievable. I'd never heard that before. I didn't know that because that's the narrative you hear. I mean, the narrative I would have grown up with as well. There was like the default was like Catholic
Mhm.
Church was like oppressive, patriarchal. Women had no rights, weren't allowed to say anything, like you're expected to be in the kitchen. This
Mhm.
kind of like, which maybe I think is more associated with a particular cultural kind of backdrop, maybe in
Mhm.
well, certainly in Ireland anyway, but it's like the church actually, a lot of that stuff isn't like, it doesn't have to be, it's not church doctrine, like it's not in the catechism. It's not like,
Hmm.
you know, and so, yeah, when you say like the church is really pro women, like what did you find? I mean, what do you mean by that? Like what would you see as being, because like a lot of young women, I imagine, think the exact opposite of that. So it might
Mhm.
clear up some misconceptions.
Mhm. Yes, I think if even we just like look at even just yeah, like any I suppose just from the course that I've just done in like theology of the body, and really just that understanding like what it is to be a woman, what it is to be male, what it is to be female, and how like we're designed like for each other to complement each other, and that like you know and also like when you think of, and like the fact that like Our Lady, like the Blessed Mother, is she is like the crowning jewel of our faith, and I don't know of any other faith that has a female figure who is so important to the faith. Like obviously she's not divine, but she is like right there, like leading everybody to Jesus. And like, so like to have like our Blessed Mother as like such a cornerstone of our faith, like people don't seem to think about that. And we just kind of get bogged down in the fact that like, oh, why can't women be priests? It's like, well, if you actually understood anything about the
Yeah.
faith, you'd understand why women can't be priests. But that doesn't mean that like, and like, we don't need women to be priests. Like women can do a multitude of other things in the church and do, and like, that's phenomenal. Um, and so, yeah, I think we're just really like it's just not a very well thought out, I think, like if people are actually
Mm.
to maybe sit down and actually just kind of open their minds, or just to, to hear the different perspectives, you'd see that actually like that's not, and again, it's like it's not in church doctrine, it's not in the catechism, it's not like we don't, and that's not to take away that like there has, of course, been like women haven't been treated fairly. Like I'm not trying to claim that like, oh well,
Uh-huh.
that of course they have to acknowledge that as well, and particularly from the
Yeah.
past. But and yeah, but no, I mean, even just when you take it back to like, yeah, that like even like how Our Lady is so like revered in our faith, and that like the
Yeah.
womb of being like a sacred space,
Mm.
and like the womb is like, the equivalent of, we compare like Mary as like Mary and Jesus are like the new Adam and Eve, and it's kind of like that's like,
Yeah, and that Mary was the Ark of the Covenant, like her womb
mhm.
that bore God.
Exactly, yeah, the womb is like the first tabernacle of the Lord, like, like, that's
Yeah.
incredible, and so that, like,
Mm.
women's role as, like, like, mother figure, and male obviously presents, like, the father, the masculine father figure, that's huge and is such a central part of our faith, so, yeah, I think if people just actually take some time to assess, you'll see that that's true.
Yeah, and that it's the path to holiness as well. I mean, there's no,
Mm.
I'm not aware of any other traditions that put as much emphasis on marriage as a vocation for
Mm.
holiness as like the cooperation of men and women, like that kind of workshop of love is where you actually attain, that's your path to salvation if you're not living the religious life. Like that
Mhm.
kind of emphasis is so the opposite of like the kind of toxic modern culture that's just like people are interchangeable with each other and just, get
Mm.
with as many people as you want and, keep
Mhm.
swapping each other for all eternity. It's like, that's kind of, I don't know if that's the ideal, to be honest.
Mhm.
Seems to, yeah, result in kind of disaster. But
Mm.
yeah, I don't know. It seems like, because it's such a, this seems so core to our culture at the moment for some reason. Like women are really, I don't know what it is. Like the culture has changed so much in 100 years. I suppose even probably from like grandparents' generation to now, like there was such a change in like women coming into the workforce, women becoming part of like political systems more. But then it was like, well, what are women now in some sense of like, are they going to be like the new men, like the future is female kind of thing of like women are just like girl bosses, take
Mm.
over everything, or it's like, or the Catholic is, mother protector, like this kind of Mary is the ideal essentially, whereas Eve is the, the negative. So I don't know. Yeah, do you think like how do you see that conflict versus like the modern kind of narrative? I don't know. What are
Hmm.
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I think women are quite lost in the sense, like, even in terms of like what feminism has done to kind of pit the sexes against each other.
Yeah.
And also like women, the goal with women, and even that's why like things like they latched onto things like contraception and like bodily autonomy and like the right to
Mm,
control their reproduction. It's like actually it's like our ability to bring life is what makes women so incredible and so powerful, and also so much more vulnerable. um but it's like that vulnerability and that like that beauty and that capacity to like to bring life into the world is incredible, and like that's our superpower. But like for the last couple of generations, the norm has been actually to sterilize yourself, and like that's what contraception, hormonal contraception is. It's sterilization. It's putting women, it's the first time, in the trans kind of debate, we often hear about the term like chemical castration when you give like
mm,
puberty blockers to children. The first time I ever heard the term chemical castration was a woman talking about, like a naturopathic doctor talking about the pill, women being on the pill. So again, that's like I've always seen like the parallels between these things. Um and so that's really has just become like the mainstream culture, is like, and like that,
mm,
like to sterilize yourself and to see that like our menstrual cycles are seen as like a curse. And that again, and that's not to take away that a lot of women really suffer and really do have like very difficult experiences, so it's not to take away from that either. But also just like sterilizing the woman, temporarily sterilizing her, is what contraception is. That's not the solution either. That's like not a holistic approach. And I suppose, yeah, then it just kind of, but that's like what the mainstream tell you, and that's what the doctors tell you. And actually, if you're not on the pill and you're sexually active and you're not ready for a child, you're being irresponsible. Um, and I think, yeah, like, and like women, it's been seen, or back in like the 60s and 70s, and, since then, that like a woman's right to access contraception, women have, fought
mm.
for this being their right to access contraception. But it's actually really, it's just given men the right to access women's bodies without consequence. And also I know like the kind of within the Catholic faith, the kind of seeing like the link between contraception and the link to abortion. Because if you're already contracepting and then, it's not always effective or it's not used correctly, and then pregnancy occurs and you're like, oh, well, I don't know this person, or I'm not in a relationship with this person, or I'm not ready, or whatever the case is. So then, people will choose for abortion. So it's like all of these things are connected, as well as then
Mm.
just, and I suppose it kind of goes hand in hand that we're also trying to make women more like men, and also women and men approach like sex very differently. Um, Obviously, because women, bear the burden of pregnancy and so on. So it's
Yeah,
a
totally
different
different
thing.
incentives.
Absolutely. But I suppose with kind of contraception then has just been trying to allow women, oh, you can be as sexually promiscuous as you want, and it doesn't matter because, you won't get pregnant. And even like we've just taken, trying to like, taking trying to take the shame out of those things, that like, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
being a slut
The
is
shame
really
is your
empowering.
conscience telling you that you're behaving in a way that's not good for
Precisely.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and now, I
Oh
mean, you
man.
see things even in our culture, and it's like, um, let's be pro HIV, like pro sexual diseases. It's just like, not pro, but I mean, like, let's
Don't.
reduce the stigma. And it's like, actually, sorry, stigma's there for a reason, that like we're not supposed to be applauding these kind of things. And rather than trying to take a step back and be like, is it really such a good thing that we have such high levels of STDs, or should we be actually taking a step back and be like, oh, maybe there's something wrong in the way that people are just the way that people are um, sleeping with so many people. So that's just, I suppose, another element to it. But yeah, I think it really just kind of the culture has taken, rather than like empowering women for what their unique gift
Mm.
is, which is like the capacity to bring forth life. And even if you're not like a mother of physical children, that you can still mother in other ways. And that's, yeah, so we've really kind of just skewed that and kind of encourage women through the culture that women should just behave and act more like men. And like, a lot of the feminist causes now is just like the gender pay gap and like we need 50% CEOs. It's like actually no we don't. Like I don't care if there's a male or like female CEO. I don't care if we have more
Yeah.
male or
It's like very
female.
stereotypical as well, isn't it? In some way, it's
Yeah.
like they have to be like, yeah, like getting it's like yeah, cashing checks and breaking necks, kind of like
Yeah.
Wall Street banker ideal or something like it. I
Right.
don't know. It's a weird, yeah,
Mhm.
we've almost swapped in some senses. Like they've just
Mhm.
tried to take that story, but that actually wasn't the right story in the first place. It was the Catholic story is the actual one that
Mhm.
respects both sexes and puts them
Mhm.
into proper organization. I think so much our society like tries to break men and women apart and think about them separately. In some sense, it's like it puts like what's good for women at odds with what's good for men, and there's this
Mhm.
kind of battle of the sexes. But like in
Mhm.
reality we're meant to live together, like it's the basis
Mhm.
of family and community. So
Mhm.
like yeah, I mean it's not very sustainable. But do you think
Mhm.
these are these obstacles like the stuff you described with like contraception, reproductive rights, those issues, the whole bodily autonomy, like is that stuff an obstacle, do you think, for women coming to the Catholic Church? Like that's something that they're like, oh, I'll have to give up on that. um
Mhm.
I'll have to sacrifice it, basically,
Mhm.
um to
Yeah,
join.
I would say like even in the sense that like so again like it's women who like and again the body is so important and like we
Mm,
hold the consequences of these things in our bodies. And so I think like again, if a woman's, if she's been on contraception or like she's had abortions or she's been sexually promiscuous or, she's, yeah, just, been involved in, stuff with the body that is, it's difficult to come to terms with that. And again, when you just see and like the it's almost like the further along you've gone the harder it is to come back. And so I do think it's just the culture. And like this is the thing, like there is a particular like spiritual battle against women and against women's bodies.
mm,
And like Satan will target women specifically, and also because like you can say we are more vulnerable, we are the weaker sex. So um so it's easy and also, the fact that women can generate life, like, puts them at a, I don't wanna say it not a disadvantage, but, like, again, they're more of a threat,
mm,
to the evil one. Um, so yeah, I think it's hard and, like, in the culture, it's yeah, it's a lot to come to terms with, particularly when and, like, I can say that because I've come through it. So I've
mm,
been on that side. I've been the feminist. I've been, the pro-choice person. I've done all these things. And I, had to face myself, and like it is so painful. Like it is like there's just the devastation, and like that you can find is just it's so tough. And I like reached a point like I almost didn't come through that. So it's so hard. And I think we really need to like recognize that, like how
mm,
difficult it is to actually come to terms with the way that you've been living for a long time and to reconcile with that. And also like if you don't know that like Jesus is there and that he loves you and that he forgives you and his mercy and his compassion and like the redemptive nature of our faith, and that like we can, you know, like that, our suffering can be used for good. And like we can, if you let Jesus come into your life and come into your heart, and you're open and you're willing to go to those really like devastating places, that like you can be transformed and you can be um become like and become new. And so if people don't know that, it's also really difficult to
mm.
like take those steps forward. But yeah, and so I think, even with the Catholic, and again, like if you maybe didn't grow up in the Catholic faith, and it's totally like, so it's totally alien to you. Like it was alien to me and I grew up in it, but if you haven't, I think coming into the Catholic faith, it's hard. But again, it's like, but that's where, because within our Catholic faith, like
Mm.
that's really, it's so rich, it's so beautiful. Like it's the pursuit, it's truth, it's goodness, it's beauty. Like that is it. Whereas like, I think even for people maybe coming to like the non-denomination churches, like, or the Christian churches, I think people will find it easier maybe to go there because there's also like a little maybe a little less pressure, um,
Mm.
in terms of kind of what's expected. You don't necessarily have to go to confession. You don't have to you just kind of have to, like, I don't know, call the Holy Spirit into your life, and you kind of read the Bible. But I don't know, and this might not be like the best assessment, but I feel like it's maybe a little bit easier for people to go there.
Mm.
Um, and that's something that I think in the Catholic Church that we're maybe just not, in some sense, like maybe not ready for, or maybe don't have the capacity for. Because like,
Mhm.
one thing I'll say is like in the non-denominational churches, like there's a lot of heads there. Like, do you know what I mean? There's the people who like were the kind of the wild boys and girls, like, there, I
Mhm.
feel like more so than there is in the
In a
Catholic
Catholic
faith.
faith.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Yeah, and maybe that's very an Irish thing as well, because yeah, I guess because it's been so culturally dominant that it's mostly the older people as well that will be
Mm,
actually like showing up that you'll be seeing. And so,
mhm,
like, for rebellious kind of young people that have come through that cycle of like sinning, like going away from God, seeing the
mm,
consequences of the sin and being like,
mhm,
oh shit, this is actually real. And then who kind of go, okay, I don't want to keep doing that cycle. I can see
mm,
it's, I need to get out of this. And then might go, religion, it's the only place where forgiveness and redemption is, like, so that makes sense. But maybe the Catholic one, there's less of a community for that type of person, I think,
mhm,
in that. I think increasingly so. I think me and you are examples of people who have kind of pushed through maybe some of the resistance to be like, I think this is the right place and I'm going to
mhm,
go anyway. But like,
mhm,
yeah, I share your opinion there that the church is not super ready for that, and it can be very difficult. Like, even for me to get baptized, I had to basically chase people down
mm,
by email all the time and like running out. And like, some people just didn't reply to me, or they didn't give me information, or they sent me to a website and it didn't make any sense. And,
mhm,
it wasn't an easy onboarding process.
mhm,
And I think people can be put off then. But I guess maybe it's just getting in there and getting into the right place,
mhm,
and the internet, I suppose, can help us find out, where people are, and where I know you're involved in Rathmines Parish is a very good one, where
mhm,
younger people tend to go. Because I think more and more people are having the same experience we've had of like, you've lived in the secular world, you've been hurt by it, you've realized the
mm,
principles are wrong, that they don't actually work, they're not going to lead to a good life, they're not going to bring you
mhm,
closer to people, they're not going to lead to love, and so you have to go somewhere else. But it's like, where else? What is the other culture? And I think it's the Catholic
mhm,
Church is the actual functioning culture
mhm,
within it,
mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. But then I think it's still difficult, like, to come into the Catholic faith then if
Yeah.
you're like, if it's totally foreign to you, yeah. So I think that's something that we need to be conscious of. And I think like, yeah, your experience is like really valuable, particularly growing up like totally outside of the faith and then coming in. So you
Yeah.
have that experience. But I think it's something that like Catholics need to kind of be conscious of as well. And I think just having the understanding, because, and I think this is like, we bring a perspective as well of having lived of the world and knowing the
Mm.
devastation. And I think, because especially I think coming into the faith, and and now I'm just trying to like live a normal Catholic life, but sometimes it's difficult because I suppose I've kind of felt my whole life like really I never really fit in, and especially the life that I've had and all the things that I've gone through, and I'm still at a point where I feel like I don't really fit in typically. But when you meet people and who've maybe been grown up in the faith and like have been practicing their faith, and it's like sometimes like we just we don't kind of it's hard to find even a common ground there because like I'm so different and and like we're all broken,
Mhm.
we're all sinners, but like I've been very far and done like so sometimes it's hard to kind of
Mm.
find even that common ground, or you feel like you're just even that there's maybe a bit of judgment or whatever from other people when you share something about the way that you used to live.
Which is like, I mean, because it's it's meant to be the loving hospital of mercy, and
Mhm.
you killed the fattened calf when the one who wandered come back, and versus the 99 who didn't wander. But yeah, no, I do see
Mhm.
that, and I think there's a cultural element of like being part of a cultural group versus actually like a path of transformation or taking that on seriously. And I think those two things kind of exist at the same time, often in the same places, weirdly. So that, I think that can be, yeah, I don't know, focusing, I guess it's finding a place, isn't it? Finding a parish or
Mhm.
finding somewhere where that's actually a spiritual director that's, serious
Mm.
about it. And
Mhm.
connecting with other people. I really think the internet is just gonna, it fills in so many gaps.
Mhm.
For this kind of stuff, because there is people online that are very serious and that have good resources and that can
Mhm.
catechize and can practice, and that I think, yeah, trying to bring some of that stuff off the internet into Irish
Mhm.
Catholicism would be very beneficial
Mhm.
for people.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just I kind of joke that like I kind of feel I give people an opportunity to really practice their faith, like if I share something. Like, so I think like people need to like those who are in the faith need to really understand what it's like to not be in the faith, and to really
Yeah,
understand
totally.
that like that the pain, like the devastation that's out there, like in the darkness, and that like Satan is really he's really got a hold on people, and so there's a lot of suffering, and like we obviously want people to come into the faith because we know like the truth of it, and we know like how just like transformative it's been, and just like yeah, it makes you just it just can transform your life. And I'd say like I'm totally changed, but I'm also more myself than I've ever been.
Mm,
And so you just want that for people, particularly when I see like women who are very similar, to how I used to be, and so I know how like I know what they're going through. I know the darkness and the suffering, and but it's to also know then that it's not in it's difficult to kind of get to this point, and so I think we need to be aware of that, and to be kind of as open and as compassionate as we possibly can for those kind of people. So
yeah, really like a field hospital of for
mm.
bringing people in out of that
Mhm.
dysfunction. I mean, a lot of the research I do on social media and stuff disproportionately affects young women, and like the statistics on like
Mhm.
the mental health crisis in young women are crazy. Like it's like
Mhm.
33% um of young women have had mental health, either depression or anxiety in the last year. It's like,
Mhm.
you know, such high numbers that would be, yeah, I mean, it's
Mhm.
just not sustainable. Like, but it is.
Mhm.
Women have become kind of a battleground, I think, for those different kind of. Yeah, there's a lot of forces trying to pull them different ways.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, yeah, if the church can genuinely offer that love and that understanding in that home, then
Mhm.
that'll win in the end. But I
Mhm.
suppose in the meantime, you know,
Mhm.
it's rough out there.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, but I think that's like where the church then has a real opportunity at the moment, and even
Mhm.
it's I suppose just kind of promoting even more things. I suppose even just like with like theology of the body, and just like understanding what it is to be a woman, and understanding the relationship
Mhm.
between men and women, and like just kind of helping people to come to know what's already in the faith. So
Yeah.
and even just things with like fertility and natural family planning, and and even like for women, like learning about like their cycles and how that can like also be like a path to holiness. And I think so it's the riches that are already there in the church, like if we're able to just actually communicate that in a way
Mm,
that can reach, the secular people. And I think
yeah.
even, like myself and like sharing like that where I've come from and actually like what it, and maybe helping people to actually understand what it is to practice or to be a Catholic and to have Jesus in your life. Like, I think that's really, important and being able to like speak to people as well. So
Yeah, if only there was a Substack on that exact topic that people could check out. Um,
yeah, it's a work in progress.
well,
Yeah.
if you're willing to share it with people, I'll include the link below.
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, it's there. I haven't necessarily published anything on it yet, but it's
Well, you're
truth of the womb is the kind of name that I'm going by. So
But you're definitely onto something, Paul. I think you've had a real hero's journey. I found it so inspiring to hear, and I think it's probably hard for people to imagine the demons that you fought on that journey. But having come from some of those places myself, I have a lot of appreciation for what you've done and your bravery in talking about it and sharing
Mhm.
with others. So I really thank you
Mm,
for this
thanks very
conversation.
much. Yeah, it's been great. Thanks.